right. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to talk also without slides. That's fine. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Sebastian. I'm, VP Tech at Gnosis. I'm also founder of HOPR. I'm also Bürgel.eth. And I'm here today to represent what is maybe in this room the smallest group, but overall, I think an important group, which is Ethereum app developers. And probably most of you are familiar with some of the apps and services that Gnosis is building. In addition to that, I'm working on a mixnet for anonymous communication called HOPR, on top of which we're building the most anonymous VPN. But this is not what it's about here today. I'm here today as a concerned citizen of Ethereum. And I guess now's the time to use this clicker. I'm concerned not because of Solana. I'm not concerned about Base. I'm concerned because many of my fellow app developers are not actually building on Ethereum. They're building on an increasing number of centralized RPC providers, centralized indexers, centralized bundlers, and increasingly centralized custody under fancy names. And I'm very, very concerned about that. And my thesis is that this is not because of stupidity, laziness, or, inability, but because we, even in this room, are unaware of how broken Ethereum really is. Now, before we get there, just to gauge the level of in this room, is there anybody who has not been running an execution layer client or fiddled with, curl to access, an EthClient? Anyone? No shame? Okay. Well, okay. So basically, a blockchain is for writing, and writing gets a lot of attention, right? I'm just going to speed run this intro. Sorry for that. So Ethereum blockchains are for writing. That's kind of obvious, gets a lot of attention, fossil, and all sorts of other things that we talk about a lot. We do not really talk about that blockchains are also for reading, right? Only that reading gets a bit more complicated than that. So there's two ways that we tell application developers you can read from Ethereum. You can query storage, where we tell application developers to kind of store responsibly, and you can use logs, right? And to obtain logs, we use something that, by the way, Felix, thank you for this wonderful motivational intro for my talk here, uses EthClient logs. Now, sorry to bore the client devs in the room. Why do we even talk about this? Well, because things are not so easy. At HOPR, we have a decentralized network. We encourage everyone to run their own Ethereum client, right? We actually want to build on top of Ethereum and not on top of a bunch of centralized services. What happened this summer? This summer, many of these nodes had a catastrophic panic. Node was shutting down, and it said something blah, 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 which is not closed but open. What's actually going on here? Our HOPR nodes are running an indexer alongside, their mixnet operations, and it turned out that they got an event that told them close this payment channel, but they didn't know this payment channel was actually even open right now, right? Why? Because there was an event which was being swallowed, right? So the node did not even get informed of this state update when parsing events. And, I hear you, well, Sebastian, why do you talk about isolated client bugs? This is boring, move on already. Well, the truth is that every single one of you client teams finds themselves on this slide. This is a widespread issue all over the place that, we spent a good amount of extremely annoying debugging time this summer on, because you deal with shit like corrupt databases. Do you know what you think when you face a corrupt database after 1 week of debugging? Because we debug the network stack, okay? To get from a network stack to a corrupt database is a pain in the ass. To then from a corrupt database get to the point that actually an Ethereum client, which is the holiest institution that we hold holy, doesn't work, that's rough. That's not something you would get to easily. So how did we get here? EthClient logs is basically the basics of Ethereum, right? It's Ethereum 101. It's standardized. And this is the standard of ETH get locks. This is the execution layer specs. Only that this, what we call specs here, does not nearly cover any of the kind of more intricate cases like the ones I was just talking about. This is basically like a request response example, which has indeed been very helpful to iron out stuff like, incompatibilities of, return codes and like types and stuff like that. That has been good. But this is not a standard that helps us iron out these kinks that actual application developers are, beating their head against the wall for. Yeah? So this is a problem in lack of standardization. And, you might say, okay, all this Hopper stuff I don't really care about, but arguably this is stuff that should work, right? This is something that Ethereum should deliver on. Like logs is not something very fancy. And every single client developer, as soon as I started like talking about this, there were a lot of people who reached out to me and who were like, Sebastian, I didn't know. This was very surprising. I didn't think about this. I was facing all this broken shit. And, I looked closer and indeed, there were issues, right? Now, the question is a little bit, why is this hard? And I've already been talking about lack of standards. But I want to give a bit of an example that we've already heard before in Felix's talk, right? Felix talked about some new features that have recently been added to Geth, and many other clients did a similar thing. Who here in the room thinks that it is even a use case that we should support to index all ERC20 transfers, to stick with this example, from genesis to tip of the chain in low latency? Is that something that every client should support? Please raise your hand. Don't be shy. Yes, I'm asking for opinions, and we try to be unopinionated in Ethereum land. Okay, so I see a handful of hands up. So who here, just the opposite, who here does not think that we should cater to this use case of, indexing events from genesis to tip? Hands up, don't be shy, no judgment. I see slightly more hands up now. But it was, I would say, 40-60. This is a problem, okay? This is a problem that even the most involved folks in the space do not have consensus on what a arguably very basic feature of Ethereum should actually cater to. And the problem downstream of this is for application developers. We had some folks actually in the privacy corner at DevConnect, Oxbow actually, privacy rules, love that stuff, because they don't work with centralized indexers. And they have been building this thing which works in a client, right, which works like browser side, and you as a user can go there and check your pool deposits and withdrawals. They do all that stuff. They do need long ranges for events, right? So there is no understanding, for even application developers, even if they're very informed, for what works. And that is because we have a lack of standards in Ethereum land that is extremely widespread, and even at the most important interface that application developers use that are supposedly supposed to bring us like 1 billion users or something, right? That is a problem. Now, luckily, there is extremely talented and very well-meaning client developers that do solve that stuff, right? You work on that, and a bunch of stuff does get resolved. I'm aware of that. But like many times, the issue is that lack of standards makes it hard. And it leads to individual client teams implementing individual solutions. And again, Felix has been pointing out one, which is building an index for logs, which is cool, but it's kind of wasteful if every client team has to work on their individual solution, right? But it's not just that they waste time on it, it's also that there's a trade-off space which is complex, right? And clients have to take decisions on. And again, just to make another poll to gauge that here, right? Clients can optimize that. And Felix talked about, how you increase the disk footprint a little bit, and how Geth made actually something that I really appreciate, which is provability, right? But this shows one dimension of trade-off space, which is optimizing for disk footprint versus provability. And there's other dimensions, right? Like, I don't care about any of that shit because I just want to run a validator. So I would like to just gauge some level of consensus again. Who here thinks that, all clients should support all these trade-off dimensions, whatever they are? We can, agree on them, but, let's pick disk footprint, provability versus, running a validator. Like, should all Ethereum clients optimized for that? Please hands up. Okay. And now the opposite, please hands up if you think that doesn't matter, you know, we can use some client for this, some other client for this. Who thinks we should do that? Damn, this is a better example than I thought it would be. So we're again around 40, 60. So this again shows me that this is a problem. Why is there a problem? Because I run a dApp node at home, right? So in Ethereum kind of holds client diversity, right? So client diversity means if, you know, Aragon fucks up, I know Aragon is great, no offense, I can just spin up Nethermind, Geth, or, you know, what have you. If we run for optimizations that I cannot run, because trust me, I know what is the biggest hardware that I can buy as a retail pleb, you know, and I cannot run this really big stuff, then I cannot switch. Then I do not actually have practical client diversity. That is an issue, and that's why I'm here talking about this, that we should actually really address this at a high level. All right. Now, luckily, it's not that bad, and there's a great team which helps us on, you know, testing and all these things, called PandaOps. Thank you, Pari and team, for working on Hive, right? So since I've been bitching about these topics, things got better, even though you don't really see it here, trust me. So since I talked about this in September and, you know, wrote this ETH research and was on the ACD testing, things got basically much greener, and we see many clients which improved quite a lot. Thank you for that. It really does make the life of application developers of Ethereum a lot better. Thank you. At the same time, let's not applaud too early because there's plenty of work ahead. Anybody who is not working on Hive has a clue of how many kind of ETH-get logs, the primary thing I'm ranting about, tests we have in there? Okay, it's 4. Why was somebody laughing? So, yeah, I mean, many of these 4 tests for several clients are currently not green, okay? Let's look at another number. Let's look at Big Brother, literally. Let's look at the web, right? At the web had the same damn issues that we are going through as an ecosystem growing up. And the web came together with a bunch of people through a bunch of painful interactions, standard setting and testing with the web platform tests. These are the results they are pulled from there, and the only thing, like you see the major browsers which run them, right? All of this stuff doesn't matter. I want you to look at this bottom number. It's a bunch of digits that are hard to read. This number is over 2 million tests. 2 million tests lead to me giving a presentation on some browser, anywhere on the planet, on somebody's damn computer, and it works. This is the effect of standards. And if anybody thinks that browsers are more complex than Ethereum, and that's why they need more tests, I'm happy to challenge you. You know, Ethereum can do a whole damn lot, and having something of under 200, you know, like RPC compatibility tests, well, there's lots of room for improvement here. Now, I hear you, standards feels a bit like this, right? And I'm aware of it. But my point is, if we do not seriously engage in standards, we will end up in a world where client developers have to engage in really annoying discussions on writing tests, because you face opposition such as, oh, you guys just took the Geth test. We're not Geth, and this is of course stupid because, and they have good reasons, and Geth has good reasons. This is a lack of standards, and is the impact of lack of standards in a developer's real life. If we don't have that, we have no visibility on Ethereum being broken, and me having to give talks while you would rather listen to something from the bleeding edge of Ethereum. Sorry for that. So basically, I am wrapping up with what do we need? We need to establish consensus. What the hell Ethereum execution layer clients are even supposed to be for and optimized for. Second, we need a commitment to standardize the RPC layer, and I heard that you have hired some folks here. Fantastic, I love it. But I think it needs really dedicated team and ownership and community engagement, because we're talking about orders of magnitude improvement. From 200 to 2 million tests, I don't know where the exact number is, I don't care, it's not 200, okay? We need an orders of magnitude change, and that needs structural change. So Finally, I think we need to have a conversation of how we enforce these standards. I don't know what that is, but like standards need some level of, I don't know, like we have a central body which the web did not have. The web did not have a well-funded Ethereum foundation. Yeah, so we are in a good position. Anyway, I would like to finish this by saying taking action is punk, doing something and caring is punk. Ethereum needs standards punk. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sebastian here. It seems like everybody was very attentive and listening to you here, that no one has submitted questions yet. And so what I might do here is thank you very much for being the presenter, and I would encourage everyone to speak to Sebastian at lunch here. 2 items that at least came to my mind is, after your talk is, well, then, what should be done right now and who should do it? So I encourage folks to ask those questions to you at the next lunch break.
Yeah, happy to talk about that one-on-one. Thank you.